Hello again, and welcome to what is now called God Healing Hearts. Just the acknowledgement that He's the one who does the actual work of healing hearts, and I'm here just simply to facilitate what He wants to do. The picture behind me is just a lead in today to the subject that God has given to my heart to share with you. And the subject is healthy boundaries, the principle of healthy boundaries found in God's Word. You know, in this COVID era where our governments have laid down laws that have forced us to go into sometimes isolation, certainly social distancing, it's an era where it's unprecedented. We haven't experienced this before in our lifetime. However, I believe it is just an example of a physical boundary between ourselves and the virus that's designed to keep us hopefully healthy and get through this so that we can get going again. You know, God's Word has examples of healthy physical boundaries, leading back to the picture behind me. You know, God actually said, let's separate the sea from the land, hence the image. He also said, let there be light. Well, as we know, the light of the sun is incredibly bright, and that will burn us unless we have what God has put in place, which is the ozone layer. And so that protects us from burning up, literally. There are many other physical protections and boundaries that God has put in place in this world. And I'm not going into that, of course, in this video. But I just wanted to open up that reality that God believes in healthy boundaries to protect us physically. He also believes in healthy boundaries to protect us spiritually and emotionally. You know, in 1 Corinthians 5, Paul talks about one of the members of the church whose toxic behavior has become so corrupt that it was influencing people in the church. And no matter how many times he got asked to change his behavior, he simply refused to do so. Ultimately, Paul recommended that this man be put out of the church. This was done with a heart of love, because God is love. And if love attempts to help a person who's got toxic behavior to change, and they still refuse to change, sometimes the boundary of complete separation is necessary as a result of God's love for both that man and the congregation that he belonged to at the time. So this is an example for us that if there are toxic people in our lives who simply refuse to change, it's okay for us to put in a healthy boundary between us and them and that behavior. Paul also went on to talk about if this man was to show over time that he had changed his ways, and also that there was fruit of that change way. That was in Acts 26:20, I believe. Looking for fruit of the change of behavior over time, Paul said, if you see that, then you can welcome him back into the church with open arms in a non-judgmental way with hearts filled with love. I just see God's heart in that entire situation where God is trying to help this man to change so that he's not hurting himself and he's not hurting others. And ultimately, it's to lead him back into rich, loving fellowship with God and with his people. And so I know in my own personal life, my story is a very narcissistic person was causing me anxiety, stress, depression, which is abusive. And no matter how many times I put up boundaries, those boundaries were never respected. And ultimately, God told me to separate from that person. So now I've gone no contact. And that was an extremely hard thing to do. It just seems to go against our nature as Christians in some ways, because we believe, and rightly so, that we're to love everybody and even our enemies. But sometimes that belief is mixed in with wrong belief, that means that everyone gets invited into our world, no matter what. Well, I believe that 1 Corinthians 5 proves that that isn't the case. That if someone is a toxic person and refuses to change, ultimately you may have to go no contact as I did. I think it's important to share with you that my heart is open to reconciliation. However, I would get the advice of mature Christians before I even stepped in that direction. And I would never be alone with that person until I knew that they respected my own personal boundaries. And therefore I knew that their relationship with me was healthy, and so my relationship with them could be restored. That's the principle of healthy relationships. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about healing and healthy boundaries in my next couple of videos. Thanks for joining me today. Blessings. Bye.